Good evening, everybody. It has always been a great pleasure to welcome you to this e-seminar. But today it is an added pleasure because it happens to be our 25th e-seminar. Today's topic is a very hot topic. As you all know, the NJAC judgment. Debate around the NJAC has often been emotive rather than dispassionate, with a disclosure ranging from evil absurdity to ditching the existing collegial system to select judges and so on. So today on to the speaker, I invite Mr. J. Ravindran to welcome the speaker. Sir, you can unmute.
Hi. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. I welcome you all to the 25th e-seminar. Before I could invite the speaker, I would like to thank the participants and the speakers of the seminars which were conducted by us. All these seminars which was conducted by us was possible only because of the participants and the allied speakers. The topic of the day is the impact of NJAC judgment. The chief guest and the speaker is Mr. Mukul Rohatgi, Senior Advocate and former Attorney General of India. Everybody knows he is MS Dhoni of the Supreme Court. And personally would him, he is a noble person in this noble profession. Two incidents which I would like to share is that one of the juniors was given a time to brief him at a particular time. That junior had gone late. He had asked him, why you are late? To that, the junior has said, sir, I came in the bus, it was late, sir, and he was quitting. Immediately, he had opened his drawer and took some money and gave him, saying that buy a bike. Second, I also heard that one of the junior counsel who went for briefing, after finishing the briefing, she had said, sir, this pen, she had seen the wide range of pens which was kept in his table, and she had said, sir, this pen is nice. Immediately, he had taken the pen and given it to her. She was surprised and she had said, no, sir, I just said it in a casual manner. But he had said, no, you have briefed me, so take this. Such a magnanimous and charitable person. He has done a charitable things lot for the Supreme Court. Now he has facilitated a bus facility during this COVID-19 where these tests were done. These are the things which I would like to share, since everybody knows that he is an eminent lawyer in the Supreme Court. These are the things which I would like to share. Sir, I welcome you, sir. Please address this gathering. And before that, I'll be failing in my duty if I don't thank my friend Nandini, who had facilitated for this meeting. Sir, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ravindran. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir. You're very much audible, sir.
So, firstly, thank you for your kind words. And I see on the screen some of my friends who have been in touch with me. I see former AG Navneet Krishnan, who is now a member of parliament. I see him in parliament also. I used to do a lot of cases for late Amma through Mr. Navneet Krishnan. I see my friend Vishwanathan. He has also been coming to Delhi, and my younger friends were all here, and of course Ravindran. So first of all, I think I want to congratulate the Madras Bar, not for organizing this seminar, but for the good work it has been doing in the last 10 years or more in challenging oppressive laws relating to appointment of members of the tribunals. And even now, currently, a case is going on called Kudrat Sandhu in the Supreme Court, where issues of appointment of various tribunals are pending, and where Mr. Datar is appearing for the Madras Bar, and I think is probably the most active bar in India which is doing good work rather than only slogans and strikes. So I want to congratulate all you members of the Madras Bar for putting up a good show in all these Supreme Court cases. That's very, very important. Now, I come to a subject which directly affects lawyers, litigants, and judges, and hence affects the judiciary as a whole. And I would like to share my own perspective because I was the Attorney General when this case was argued, and I was there for a number of days, and where this judgment has been delivered. Now, let me tell you, friends, in a very short time or a capsule, as you know, all know that a judge of the Supreme Court is appointed under Article 124. And similarly, a judge of the High Court is appointed under 217. I see Mr. Viduthalai also, I recognize him because he used to come to Supreme Court and I used to meet him when I would go to Madras. When I was last went doing some Facebook cases, which I got transferred to the Supreme Court, so I don't need to go to Madras or Chennai. But anyway, so a judge is appointed under 124, and the words of the Constitution are very, very simple. That a judge of the Supreme Court will be appointed by the President, and the President will necessarily consult. Please mark the word consult the Chief Justice and such other judges as he may desire, even of the high courts. So the President can have a wide-based consultation, but consultation with the Chief Justice is mandatory. Now, that was the position in 1950 when the Constitution was framed, and that is the position even now. There is no amendment to 124. I may also tell you that when Dr. Ambedkar and others were framing the Constitution, there was a big debate. Should the appointment be with the consultation of the Chief Justice, or should it be with the concurrence of the Chief Justice? On this debate, Dr. Ambedkar said, words to this effect, I am quoting from memory, I don't have any paper. He said, I am not willing to vest such a power in the hands of the Chief Justice. Namely, if concurrence is used, the Chief Justice can veto any and every appointment which the government may put forth or the President will put forth on behalf of the government. Because he said that the Chief Justice, like us, would be a simple person who may have his own weaknesses. And therefore, it is not proper to vest so much power. He also said, I don't want to vest absolute power in the government also. So they found a via media. The government will propose, there will be a wide-based discussion, and finally the government will take a call, and in matters of high appointment, it is expected that the government will act fairly, not in a malafide fashion, and based on the consultation, they will appoint. Now, this is as simple as two lines of English can be based on the Constituent Assembly debates. As you remember, my friends, after 25 years of working these provisions for appointment, there was no problem. Problems came soon before the emergency, when those cases of nationalization, R.C. Cooper, bank nationalization, and this case of Keshananda happened. Then came supersession. twice supersessions were done. One, A.N. Ray was allowed to supersede 3 judges who resigned. Second supersession, Justice H.R. Khanna was superseded, as you remember. So this started the rattling of the provisions of appointment of judges. And therefore, in the first judgment, the second judgment of the judge's case, this rattling led to a reaction from the judiciary. What was the reaction? That let us somehow take over the power of appointment. How do you take over the power? As long as Article 124 remains, you can't take it over. So a method was devised in the second judge's case to take over the power by reading concurrence in the place of consultation. So if you write the word concurrence in Article 124, it will mean that the Chief Justice has a power of veto. This way, in my respectful submission, the Constitution was distorted. An article was read to mean what it doesn't mean. It's like calling night instead of day and vice versa. And by a judicial interpretation, which is completely contorted and distorted, the provisions of the Constitution were distorted. By that distorting, the Chief Justice took the power of virtually of appointment, making the government a post office. So what happened? A concept of a collegium system was made. There is no word called collegium in the Constitution. There is no collegium which exists in the Constitution. So the Supreme Court made a judge-made law and supplanted it over the Constitution. Virtually, the Supreme Court said, read the collegium in the Constitution. How and why and where, nobody knows. So a collegium became senior most 5 judges for appointment to Supreme Court, senior most plus 2 judges for appointment to high courts. So the Supreme Court arrogated the power to itself by using the word concurrence and this collegium. So a new system developed that wherever the High Court wishes to make a recommendation for appointment of lawyers as judges to the High Court, they will send the names to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will approve or disapprove. And once they are approved or disproved, they will be sent to the government. Unless the government has some great input about suitability of a judge which the court is not aware, either High Court or Supreme Court, the Law Minister can give its input. Except that input, the Law Ministry had no power. And that is how now, my friends, for the last 30 years, this system has gone on. Now we all know that with best of intentions, a closed group of people, and mind you the words of Ambedkar, that the Chief Justice is a man of failings like any other individuals. So 5 judges or 3, depending on where to appoint, sit in a closed room. I am now on the working of a collegium and I have seen it. You also are aware of appointments to Madras High Court. So what happens? Names come from the High Court. The High Court also has its own collegium. So one collegium and another collegium. So the High Court's collegium of 3, 4, 5 judges pick out names from the bar. They are supposed to pick out good names, not meant only on race, color and religion or minorities, but basically looking at everything, representation of all communities, men and women, and generally to have good, honest, faithful people. But how those names are sent, there are no advertisements, there are no rules, there is no criteria. Even for appointment of a postman, and I was doing a postman recruitment case today in the Supreme Court before Mr. Justice Kaul, who was probably one of your finest Chief Justices in the last 20 years. A postman selection is by way of a competitive exam in which lakhs of people sit and a few hundred are selected, mind you. But in the case of appointment to a constitutional post,
Uh, Sir, you're able to hear, sir? Your internet connection is down, sir. Mukul, sir? Mukul, sir? அவர் வெளியவே போயிட்டாரா? Friends, just a few minutes. I think his internet connection was low and he couldn't join in again. Ravi sir, will you be able to call him over phone?
Sneha,
Yeah.
I just spoke to him. He wants him to be let inside.
Yeah.
He's
No.
trying
No.
to.
No. Yeah. He's just logged in.
Oh.
1 second. 1 second.
Sneha, unmute him.
Yeah. One second. 1 second. Sir has not joined in as a panelist yet. 1 second. Yeah, I'm unmuting. 1 second. Sir, I've given you an ask to unmute. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
can you hear me now? Sorry for the...
Yes, sir. You're
sir, yes,
audible, sir.
Yeah, so I was telling you that this is how this collegium was appointing people. There are no broad guidelines as to how many points one would keep if you have a point scale. And I gave you an example of a postman selection. So now it is obvious that in the last 20 or 30 years, this collegium system has not worked. It is completely opaque. It is not transparent. And generally, the bar which knows how good its members are for appointment as judges has generally found that not very good people have been appointed and better people were available, but they could not come up because they did not know a member of the collegium. These kind of complaints go on. A lot of lawyers make the complaints, judges make these complaints, privately judges say all this. But anyway, this is how it has gone, and what has happened is that the power which is available in the first 3 or 4 judges has remained like a club in those 3 or 4 judges. Whoever become those 3 or 4 senior, every 2 years, every 1 year, every 5 years, this power has gone on. So now, with so much discomfort, so much disgruntled feeling all across, and the fact that the number of cases are going on piling, arrears are mounting, and very, very good people are not able to come up. So if 10 judges are appointed, let us say in a group, broadly 2 or 3 are good, 2 or 3 are average, and 4 or 5 are not good. So with this problem, the arrears will go on mounting. Nothing was helping. So the government then came and thought, and Parliament debated that we need to change the system because the court has taken over the power to itself, which was not in the constitution. So by the 99th amendment, the constitution was sought to be amended. So what was the basic idea? The basic idea was that we should have a commission. Like you have UPSC. UPSC conducts tests to appoint people in high positions. So we will have a commission called National Judicial Commission. Now that commission could not come unless the constitution was amended. So 124A was added. And basically the constitution was amended to provide a commission which will consist of 5 or 6 people. Now the importance of the commission was that it would break the stranglehold only of the judiciary being there. So what did it say? You can have 2 eminent people, 2 eminent lawyers. You can choose eminent lawyers who are not really bothered with the fact that who should be appointed or not, except with only one thing, that good people should be appointed. Lawyers of that level of standing who are not bothered about the fact that will they curry favor with somebody or not. So you have 2 eminent people who have a law minister to represent the views of the government, the Chief Justice and 2 other judges below him. Now, what was wrong with this? So it was a multifaceted body which would provide input. It also had that the eminent member can also be from SC, ST, etc. So idea was to have a whiff of fresh air so that people who are outside the system can tell you what is wrong with the system. They can tell you that people of marginalized classes are not getting justice. Why? Because lawyers only from high community are being appointed, upper community. So they can tell you those facts. Look at what is happening. Look at how the downtrodden are remaining downtrodden. They are not able to come up because their point of view is not looked at. The government can say, look, our point of view also may be seen, and the court will also have its point of view. I think that there was nothing wrong with it. But then it is not very easy to give up power. So power which was taken by way of a judgment contrary to the constitution was sought to be retained. And a very oft-used phrase that such a body will mar the independence of the judiciary. So on the touchstone of independence of judiciary, a committee was struck down. The constitutional provision itself was struck down. And mind you, a constitutional provision to be struck down would be contrary to what? It's a part of the constitution itself. You strike down a law on the premise that it is contrary to the constitution. So a provision of the constitution was struck down on the basis of the constitution. I find that also a matter of some debate which is required. It is struck down on the ground that a veto can affect the choice of the Chief Justice. Forgetting the words of Dr. Ambedkar, that the Chief Justice is a man with many failings like anybody else. Now, if a veto was bad, the veto could be struck down. The court could, I asked the court as Attorney General, allow this system to work for a year. Keep the matter pending. Let us see how it works. Some changes can be made. Veto can be removed. But to say that the law minister being there is a very evil thing was, I think, nothing but hanging on to power which was taken by a judgment contrary to the constitution. So, the act was struck down. It was not allowed to live. It could not work even for one day. It should have been allowed, but it was struck down so that the stranglehold of the collegium remains. You are aware that several judges of the Supreme Court have openly said that the collegium system requires much improvement. One such judge was Justice Ruma Pal, Justice Joseph, Kurian Joseph, so many other judges. Now, where are we? I just want to share with you, and I have got some details. So the collegium system has worked in the past, it is working even now. Where are we today? There is constant friction. Even though the government doesn't have a right to do anything, the government is trying its best to have some kind of say and not be a postman. Because of that, if you note that the sanctioned strength of the different high courts is 1079. 1079 is the total strength of all the high courts put together, permanent and additional. And out of 1079, 678 are in position. So 678 by 1079. There is a difference of 400. The difference of 400 vacancies is broadly 33%. So that means at all times, this is the data as on 4th of September 2020. So you have a position of 33% vacancies by and large available at all times. And mind you, the vacancies which have been filled up are filled up by a collegium which is not legal. And as you know, it has many failings. So the current scenario is without a different body, the same body which is going on for the last 30 years must go on. And if anybody else has anything to say, it is taken as an affront to the independence of the judiciary and is frowned upon. Now I ask you, my friends lawyers, don't you think that there is a time for a change? If NJC is set aside, maybe the government should come with another model which may not have the veto, so as to satisfy the conscience of the courts, so that you can have a more transparent system, and where the aspirations of lawyers who want to be judges and who work hard are also allowed to come up, not because they have a grandfather or a godfather to tap so that he comes in somewhere, but where a person who does well is seen and picked up by a committee. Don't call it NJAC, but some other committee. I think that is the need of the hour. And maybe the government will be well advised to do something. I remember telling the Supreme Court and citing the manner of appointment of judges in at least 40, 50 countries. I took the Latin American countries, I took the Western countries, I took Pakistan, I took other countries. My friends, in no country in the world, and I repeat, in no country in the world do judges appoint themselves. You see how it is in America. Now, one respected judge, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a lady, has died at the age of 85. Her vacancy is to be filled. The vacancy is filled straight by the president, by nobody else. So it is not that Americans don't know. It is not that they say that it is purely political. That is that system for 200 years. But the veto of the president to appoint somebody is not final. It is subject to a public debate. So a public debate occurs on TV between journalists, between public figures, between Democrats and conservatives or liberals, Republicans and Democrats in America. A debate occurs. A judge who is to be appointed is asked searching questions. And I have seen such debates asking a prospective judge that you were expelled or rusticated from one college into, say, when you were 18 on account of having a drug or smoking a drug. What do you have to say? And the judge will have to come clean. That is a system which they have also formed. They don't proceed with a system to say, well, all power is with the government, all power is with the judge or judges. So why should we not have a relook? So I wish to end this submission before you, that we should all have maybe a movement. Maybe the Madras Bar can be the leader in moving a petition, even though it may or may not be liked by a court, that the matter should be referred to a larger bench. And maybe we should have a relook. We should have a legal audit of what has happened to this collegium in 30 years. What kind of judges has it produced? What kind of judgments has it produced? What are the areas? What have we been able to do with the areas? Let the court have introspection. Let there be a public debate on that introspection. Let it be televised. Let lawyers freely say. Let public bodies come in and say what should happen. And I submit that is the only way that you can overthrow this cloak and dagger policy of completely under a shroud and nobody knows who is being appointed. And I earnestly request you, you are leaders of the bar in Madras, and Madras is the most active bar. And I say hats off to the Madras Bar. This is the way maybe that we can look at something, that in our lifetimes, some things will change, some aspirations will change. Some other people who have no godfathers will also be able to come up. Thank you very much. These are the thoughts I wish to express so that people start thinking and doing something. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I think Mr. Navanitha Krishnan is there to interact with you, sir. Navanitha Krishnan, sir.
Yeah. Vanakkam. Sir, I welcome you, sir. Mr. Mikuti, the eminent jurist, senior advocate, Supreme Court of India, former Attorney General. As a beneficiary of your brilliant advocacy, I am now standing before you. I once again thank you, sir. I am the beneficiary. I am repeating it. Only because of efforts, I was able to get good name from my boss, Madam Jayalalitha. And I thank you once again, sir.
Thank you very much.
Competent, eminent jurist to speak about the judicial appointments to the Honorable High Court and Honorable Supreme Court. You have delivered a very, very clear, and also easily understandable lecture, even by a layman. regarding the appointment of judges to High Court and Supreme Court. And as a student of law, I learned many things in the parliament. We supported the bill, and also the whole parliament passed the bill unanimously. But unfortunately, as you rightly pointed out, the Supreme Court struck it down. So I am really thankful to you, sir. Mr. Mehul Rotahi, I am very happy to see you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your kind.
Very important thing, sir. Very
Thank you.
important thing. I congratulate Mr. J. Ravindran on his 25th e-seminar. He has been conducting so far 24th and now 25th also over. Now, very important legal relevant topics and also socially important topics also taken up in this seminar and very successfully conducted, and he is creating legal awareness and also social awareness. I thank personally and also on behalf of lawyers community. I pray God for his very good, the best success in this endeavor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Sir.
much, sir.
Sir, I got a thought to share.
Yes, sir. I just unmuted
Sir, this is
you.
Vidudalai. I got a thought to share, sir. I want your reactions on that. The first judge's case was decided by 3 judges. And the second judge's case was reviewed by 9 judges. When that is so, would it not be proper now, as you put forward? In fact, you have hit the nail on its head, and I am one with you. We are on the same page. Now, this 5 judges bench, where 4:1 NJAC case was decided, you argued the matter. In all fairness, should it not go before a larger bench of 9 judges?
You are very right, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Viduthalai. I told the government, file a review, file a curative,
Yes.
and we can, because there are judges in the Supreme Court who feel that this judgment is not correct, and we can have it referred to a larger bench in the review, and in the larger bench, the government can even tinker with this bill to the satisfaction of the court. You are absolutely right. One more thought I wanted to share with you, which I forgot.
Tell me, sir.
You see, originally this 5-judge bench was headed by Justice Anil Dave. The other side, SCBA, I was for the government. SCBA came and said that Justice Dave was number 1 or number 2 at that time, after the Chief Justice. And therefore, he would be an interested party, because the bill said chief plus 2 judges, if you remember. So Justice Dave recused himself, and the bench was then headed by Justice KR, who himself was going to be Chief Justice.
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes.
as for government and AG, it was not in the correct spirit of things for the government to tell a judge that you should not hear. Now, if that principle was good to remove Justice Dave or ask him to recuse, then even KR should have recused.
KR
No?
should have recused.
And it should have gone to 3 judges who would never have been 1, 2, or 3. We could find 3 judges or 5 judges who could never be 1, 2, or 3. And then that's how it would have gone. But you see, these are all, I am now sharing it with you. These are all things where people want to cling on to power in one form or the other. I don't understand what SCBA got out of it. What have they got out of it? Is SCBA or any other petitioner so happy with the collegium system that you quash the new system and go back to an old system? Please tell me your experience of your bar. I want to know how many lawyers who are working, who are your regular members, who are every day in the Supreme High Court, how many of them are supporting every appointment which is being made to the High Court?
Not many, sir.
Then
Only the collegium judges.
Then how is it happening? So according to me, SCBA filing this petition, SCORA filing this petition, was cutting the branch on which you are sitting. Their own people are not going to be appointed as long as you have a closed collegium. You don't, one doesn't understand you are cutting the same branch. But that's how it is.
We will be approaching you for the review, sir.
Yeah, I am willing. I am willing. I am of course willing. You can file a review. Let us speak to Datar.
Ah,
But
yes,
that bar was on the other side. Your Madras bar was on the other side in that case. You will have to have a rethink first. Your bar should have a rethink. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you
I
very
agree,
much.
sir.
Yes,
Nice, sir. Nice, sir.
Thank
Miss
you. Bye-bye.
Nand,
Good day. Bye, Ravindran.
Miss Nandini Gore would like to interact with you, sir.
All right. 2 minutes. I have to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
Yes,
sure,
Nandini.
sir.
Yes, Nandini.
Hi, sir. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you very much for this lecture. Sir, before you go, I want your comments on one of the latest books which has come, Sex in Supreme Court. I want your views on that.
You are taking cold to Newcastle because one of my articles is in that book.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, I think it's a very good compilation of articles which is published by my junior Saurabh Kirpal. And I have written an article on Sabrimala and the judgment. And I have supported the minority of Justice Indu Malhotra that merely because it's a matter of a temple, you can't have equality in every field whatsoever. And I would recommend that all you lawyers pick up that book. It's a slim book. So you can have a few thoughts about various articles which are written. And I am proud to say that I commenced the arguments on the challenge to 370. I was followed by Datar, but that day at lunchtime, after arguing till lunch, I fell ill and I had to go off. And then Datar continued and that 370 was struck down.
Sir, another small question. Sir, what are your views, sir? Because today you're so vocal and I also want to be vocal that should gender come in between while appointment of judges?
According to me, it should not. And if at all, I am firmly of the view, and I am saying it openly, I find that women, advocate on records, women juniors, and I have some of them, are very, very hardworking and very, very faithful.
Yes, sir.
So if at all, we should lean in favor of women and having more of a representation. Parliament was going to have 1/3. According to me, we must have 1/3 or at least 1/3, if not half, to start with. And you will find that some of our best judges have been women. And I can give you 2 straight examples right away. One was Justice Suranda Bhandare of the Delhi High Court. She unfortunately died because of cancer. She was an extremely good judge. A judge doesn't require only knowledge. According to me, a judge requires humanity and compassion and only common sense. Knowledge comes by both the lawyers telling you what the law is. And you can decide which is correct. But human compassion is something which a judge and common sense. She was the great judge. And the second good judge I remember was Justice Rumapal in the Supreme Court. So we should encourage more and more. Rather than discrimination, it should weigh in their favor.
Thank you so much, sir.
That's the feeling I have. Thank you very much.
Sir,
Good day.
Mr. J.
Sir, one
Ravindran.
last question.
Ah,
So one last question, sir. Sorry,
Yeah,
sir.
Ravindran.
Sir, study shows that appointing children and relatives of the sitting judges percentage is substantial percentage, and they occupy nearly 20 to 30% of the entire High Court, sir. What is your
Very,
opinion
very
on that?
That's
important
collegium.
question. Very important question. I completely disagree with this nature of appointments. And this is nothing but, you call it a collegium or call it a club. You see, you must understand one thing, that judges' children or their relatives or brothers will definitely have some additional advantage, in the sense that more of their family will come into the profession. Like an actor's son is an actor, a singer's son is a singer, a doctor's son, a lawyer's son or a judge's son will be there, right? So to some extent, they will be there in the bar. And they will be more than normal. I can understand. But I am not willing to accept 20%. And that is only because of the club. Today I will make my brother judge's relative, tomorrow when he comes and somebody else comes, he will make, you see, this is why it is more than 20%. I disagree. Well, 5-7% will be there because more and more are there. But this club business should go. This is not a club. It's a constitution. It belongs to the people. Everybody has an equal right. Not only because I am a second or a third generation lawyer, you have an equal right. If you are better than me, you should be able to go up and challenge a person who's a third generation, doesn't matter. But this is happening, you see, few and far between, unfortunately.
Thank you so much, sir.
I will go off then. Good evening.
Thank you so
In spite
much.
of our busy schedules,
Sir, I'm really sorry, sir. If you could just put up with one more question of Senior Counsel and the President of the Madras Bar Association,
Sure.
Mr. K.L. Sundaresan, sir.
Sure,
Hello,
sure.
sir. Good evening. How are you, sir?
How are you, Mr. Sundaresan?
Fine. Sir, one question.
How have you got time to attend the webinar?
Sir, when you are there,
Exactly, sir.
sir, one question.
Yeah.
Do you approve this 1/3 reservation for district judges in appointment to the high courts when there is no provision in the constitution?
No,
And
I
is it
don't-
there in other high courts?
I don't approve. Because, and I am sorry to say, I have seen a large number of district judges coming to the Supreme High Court in the last 3 to 4 years. Right?
Yes, sir.
And a very large number of them think that, you see, it's like a quasi-retirement.
Yes.
You keep doing something and go away. According to me, merit must play the largest role. And then along with merit, you can have gender. You can have that if a man is from a marginalized system of society, give them a push. All that. But predominantly merit. So if out of 100 you have to give some points, 50 must go for merit. But that is not happening. And this system culture of 1/3, 1/4 coming like a quota. We hear of a quota. Where is this quota in the constitution? Tomorrow they will say have a quota in the army. You can't have that. Therefore, I don't agree with this quota business.
Sir, but then district judges only after going through their exams, after only due to the merit they are being appointed as a district judge, sir. They undergo a exam and thereafter an interview. So
that is all right, but that happened 25 years ago. You see, so when you come to the High Court, which is a constitutional position, you have also to see somebody can work hard, get into the post. But suppose the district judge has been average by and large for the last 20 years. This is not just a promotional post. You see, it is not just a promotional post from one level to another level. It's not like that. That's why.
okay, sir. Sir,
Okay,
thank
madam,
you.
I need to go. Thank you very much. Good day.
Thank you
Sir,
so
thank you,
much,
sir.
sir, for having spent your valuable time, sir. Thank you, sir.
thank you, sir.